George Soros. Does that name ring a bell? I'm sure it does. If you take interest in global trends, popular culture, or geopolitics, you may have definitely come across this name. Let's put a face to it. This is the man I'm talking about. He is George Soros, arguably one of the most controversial figures in the world, with as many supporters as detractors. And now he has targeted the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He alleges Modi and billionaire industrialist Adani are close allies, that their fate is closely intertwined. And that's not all. Soros has made some questionable predictions as well. According to him, Modi's political position will be significantly weakened. And why is that? Because of Hindenburg's fraud charges against Adani. Now, for some people, Soros might be a legend, but he also has been called a man of malicious influence, a billionaire who is able to move markets, someone who can sway politics and opinion. But his views on the Indian Premier might not bode well. Who is the real Soros? Why is he such a polarizing figure? Is he really in a position to preach to India? Hello and welcome. I'm Molly Gambhir and this is Gravitas Plus. Have you ever heard of Black Wednesday? It refers to an event in September 1992 when George Soros and a group of investors forced Britain to withdraw its pound from the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, ERM. In other words, they forced the pound out of existence. How was this done? Soros placed an enormous bet against the British pound. He said it would sink below the lowest currency exchange limit. More investors placed their bets assuming this would happen. Their actions put pressure on the pound. It sank further, ultimately pushing the United Kingdom out of the ERM. All of these investors made money up to $300 million. But Soros was the winner, earning $1.5 billion in just 1 month. This score earned him legendary status and boosted his firm's wealth to $7 billion. They started calling him the man who broke the Bank of England. Today, they call him a master manipulator of the global order. An unregulated billionaire with a messiah complex. Some say he can bring down not just currencies but entire systems. Some accusations are indeed far-fetched. But they say there is no smoke without fire. So even if these are exaggerations, what exactly are they based on? Let's simply look at how much he is worth. Soros is among the richest hedge fund managers of the world with an estimated worth of $6.7 billion. Some say he is worth more than this, given the suspiciously enormous sums of money that he gives away for charitable causes. He has donated more than $32 billion to a foundation that he runs. What is his money being used for? For education programs, health camps, human rights movements, justice reform, global governance, and quote-unquote, furtherance of democracy. How is this done? Open Society Foundations. A name inspired from a 1945 book, The Open Society and Its Enemies. This body is headquartered in New York and has active programs in more than 60 countries. This group gives major grants to organizations and parties that are aligned with its mission and objectives. Basically, anybody who seeks to shake up the status quo. In Israel, the only democracy in West Asia, the list of grantees of the OSF include a number of Israeli NGOs that deny the legitimacy of Israel. In Palestine, the OSF funds NGOs like Al-Haq and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, both of which are associated with the Popular Front, an outfit designated as a terrorist organization by the US, EU, Canada, and Israel. In June 2018, Hungary, which happens to be his native country, passed a law dedicated to Soros. It's called the Stop Soros Law, aimed at ending OSF funding to organizations. that support illegal entry of undocumented migrants. The OSF calls this law authoritarian, and Hungary says it's only safeguarding the national security. Now, here's the thing. Promoting and funding reforms in a system is one thing, but undermining a nation's sovereignty by influencing its decisions is another. He said the Hindenburg report will lead to a democratic revival in India. But isn't India already a democracy? Well, not so much, according to Soros. And here's something else you should know. George Soros and the OSF seek to liberate the world from ideas that they consider outdated and restraining. They want to change political realities that are not suitable to their principles. Take their activism in India. In January 2020, Soros unveiled a plan to set up a $1 billion fund to build a global network of higher educational institutions that will help students put up a resistance against growing nationalism. He singled out several countries and their leaders. India was one of them. He called India a Hindu nationalist state, which is suffering the biggest and most frightening setback. In 2018, Amnesty received a €137,000 grant from the OSF for a campaign to repeal a law Ireland had passed. And in June 2021, just a month before the Pegasus report came out, Open Society Foundations named the former Secretary General of Amnesty as its Vice President for Global Affairs. And here's something else that you must know. Sherpa, a French NGO which is a persistent litigator in India's Rafale deal with France, has also been a recipient of indirect funds from the OSF through a third party. Simply put, a revolving door spins between these NGOs and the offices of George Soros. Same goes for the media organizations involved in this project. The Media Research Center, an American media watchdog established in 1987, says that 30 American news organizations have links to George Soros. Most of them were part of the Pegasus project. Can this nexus between news organizations and George Soros be ignored? Can these links be dismissed as a baseless conspiracy theory? I don't think so. A billionaire is using his power, influence, and his money to make media networks shape narratives across countries and to go after establishments that don't match his vision of the world. The Western media, in cahoots with organizations like Open Society, have had a long habit of cancelling the so-called third world countries, India in particular. They see India as a metaphor for intolerance, orthodoxy, ignorance, and poverty. Let me show you a few examples of this cancel culture. August 2019, when India revoked Article 370 in Kashmir, the New York Times said, bloodshed is all but certain. Note the confidence with which this assertion was made. What happened to their prophecy? The BBC, its terminology for Kashmir is IOK, Indian Occupied Kashmir. Would it called Ireland, British Occupied Ireland? Not in this lifetime. The trend is evident. India is seen through filters of bias. Reports based on conjecture and supposition indulge in fear-mongering. The idea is not to convey facts or developments. The idea is to validate and propagate prejudice. Why is it that only certain points of view from India get featured in opinion pieces? Why are writers selected based on their position against the current dispensation? Why are only organizations with a certain leaning made part of global investigations? Why is it that an Indian Prime Minister can be criticized on front pages, but not the Chinese president who operates his country like a prison? Why are photographs of burning pyres from India blown up on front pages and accounts of the Taliban's killings in Afghanistan pushed to later columns? It gets murkier as you dig deeper. There is certainly a nexus that operates to alter political realities the world over, a nexus that runs from the political corridors of liberal powers to the many offices of the Open Society Foundation across the world. And every time this nexus is called out, its ecosystems go on a one-sided rant devoid of facts.